Mr. Chairman and committee members, thank you for hearing all of our statements and for holding this hearing. My name is Melissa Ruth, Program Manager with the Idaho Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, a statewide nonprofit dedicated to ending gender violence and all forms of oppression in foster environments where every individual can thrive. I graduated summa cum laude with a master's degree in guidance and counseling from the University of Wisconsin, and I am a licensed clinical professional counselor who has worked with hundreds of individuals and families over the course of more than 2 decades. Our work at the Idaho Coalition to End Violence, as you may know, has been recognized by the White House, U.S. Senator Crapo, and has been featured in the New York Times, Nightline, CNN, and other mainstream media outlets. We receive orders for our prevention materials from around the state, around the country, and around the world. Requests for training across professional sectors also come from around the state and around the country. We are national technical assistance providers on the prevention and response of domestic and sexual violence, including adolescent relationship abuse. I signed up to testify in the capacity of a health professional, and I will do so, particularly in light of so much misinformation that has been stated as fact in these past 2 days. However, I must also say that I am here as a friend, an ally, and concerned neighbor. Some of my dearest friends and neighbors are gay, lesbian, queer, and transgender. I surround myself with amazing people, smart, talented, accomplished, family-oriented, safe, well-adjusted, and kind. My friends who happen to be part of the LGBTQ community are all those qualities and more. I have been with these friends when they have had insults hurled at them, told to leave businesses, and humiliated in other ways. I haven't just had clients who have come to work through their pain. I have dear friends, people who are raising amazing children and helping me raise my children, people who respond to community needs, yet denied the rights I take for granted on a regular basis. Not one gay or transgender person I have ever met has expressed a desire for special rights, nor have they ever shown any sign of being sexually perverted or dangerous. On the contrary, the gay, lesbian, and transgender people that I have known through counseling and close, decades-long friendships simply want and know they deserve healthy relationships, families, and communities free from discrimination. As a health professional, I have seen the impact of harassment and discrimination on gay, lesbian, and transgender individuals, as well as on their families. I have seen incredible resilience despite horrific harassment and chronic discrimination, and I have seen lives destroyed. This toll does not affect one. It does not affect just a few. It affects all of us. And until all of us are protected by our Constitution, we will be sanctioning hatred and bigotry. I urge you to base your policy decisions on current research and principles of justice. Wrong or simply unfounded information is dangerous. Here are a few facts from the health field. The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which I will refer to as the DSM, it is commonly referred to as the DSM, published by the American Psychiatric Association, offers a common language and standard criteria for the classification of mental disorders. It is relied upon by clinicians, researchers, regulatory agencies, health insurance companies, the legal system, and policymakers. The DSM evolves with science and best practices, and we must do the same as providers and policymakers. Nearly half a century ago, homosexuality was removed from the DSM as a mental disorder. Even back in the 1950s, the early 1950s, research confirmed the fact that homosexuals and heterosexuals are no different from each other in mental health. Referring any client for therapy to reduce or eliminate this client being attracted to a same-gendered person, or to change their experienced gender and conform to their assigned gender, contradicts the American Counseling Association's Code of Ethics and other mental health and biomedical professional organizations. The Code of Ethics also strongly discourages any professional from even referring a client to what they call conversion therapy and does not endorse any training for this therapy. Professional counselors may not offer these services because they have been shown to cause harm and are ineffective. Individuals who are gay and lesbian and experience distress related to this do so because of homophobia within their religious and greater community, and this is in the DSM. It is our duty as Americans and for anyone in the health field to stand up for equal protection under the Idaho Constitution. There is a political agenda to use science to cause fear of people who are gay, lesbian, and transgender. We have seen that here in testimonies. None of those studies can be backed up according to standards of evidence-based research. That means that thorough, extensive literature reviews show there is no evidence that gay and lesbian people sexually abuse children. In fact, a UC Davis study in 1994 tracked sexually abused children. In this study, for 1 year in Denver, every child that presented at the ER or a child abuse center was asked, they did the research, and where the molesters were known, less than 1% were gay or lesbian. Less than 1%. 0% were transgender. If we are worried about dangerous adults, any of us who are heterosexual, particularly heterosexual males, have significantly greater likelihood to molest a child. As for the testimonies heard this week, in fear that transgender people would be parading around their genitals in front of our children, that is not a characteristic associated with transgender people or gender dysphoria. Let me repeat, there is no factual basis for these comments. In fact, what these people were describing is a disorder called exhibitionist disorder, which is in no way associated with being gay, lesbian, or transgender. And you can find that on pages 689 to 691 of the DSM. Transgender people face drastically elevated rates of harassment, discrimination, and violence, and that violence has increased in the last decade and a half. If you have not educated yourself on what it means to be transgender, you must do so. I must do so. We all must continue to do so. Incorrect or unfounded information is not a basis for legislation. However, professional consensus among the most respected scientific communities is the DSM, again, based on thorough research, is decisive in addressing what transgender people are dealing with. Gender dysphoria is valid and should be treated with biomedical methods to help people align with their experienced gender. It is also crucial that our environment, from family to community to policy, support and protect the rights of people who are transgender. Not special rights, but absolutely equal rights. Gender dysphoria is often seen in children as young as 2 to 4 years. Signs of distress for transgender individuals develop when they are forced to live incongruent with their experienced gender. Distress is significantly mitigated when biomedical treatment is available and their environment is supportive of their experienced gender. In other words, transgender people are not the problem. We are the problem. We create a hostile environment and discriminate against people because we refuse to accept and understand what has been understood in our scientific community for years. Beyond what I have personally witnessed, I have heard many stories from wonderful people, from middle school children to folks well into their 50s, of discrimination they face simply due to their gender identity or orientation. This discrimination is real. It is pervasive. We must legislate what is right, and that is equal rights and protection for all Idahoans. We passed a law to mandate seatbelts because it was the right thing to do, and because people weren't wearing them without that law, even knowing full well that it was the right thing to do. We need policy to push practice. People are dying over this. People are truly dying over this. People are suffering. We need to create liberty for all, not only some. Each year, the Idaho Coalition hosts a writing challenge, and I know that there are even children of members on the committee that have won awards from this writing challenge on healthy relationships and healthy communities. This poetry contest is offered to middle school and high school students throughout the entire state of Idaho. As a counselor, I read all the concerning poems. We get thousands of poems every year in this contest. I read all of the concerning poems and contact the schools if needed. Each year, we are seeing an increase in poems from students across this state, from Salmon to Moscow to Mackay to Blackfoot to Parma, from teens and preteens who are hiding their gender identity, oftentimes suicidal from the burden and the lack of hope they feel because there's no acceptance, no support, no justice. We will lose more lives. We are on our way. Now is the time to add the words, no exceptions, to evolve past this current state where I am protected as a straight woman, but individuals who are victims of abuse or rape, one of my clients or best friends, is not. Or they're denied services because of being transgender or a lesbian. I am ashamed of us for this reality. We must fix it. In conclusion, I ask the House State Affairs Committee, on behalf of myself as a mother, as a woman, and on behalf of the Idaho Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence, to pass this bill. Add the words, no exceptions, and I thank you very much.
Are there questions? Representative Bateman?
Yes. Mr. Chairman and ma'am, I have a question. You said we should promote liberty for everyone and not just some. Now, I've had homosexual members of my extended family whom I love. But I've also had some obese people in our family. I mean, seriously obese. I had one very close relative, a female, 400 pounds. And it was my experience that she had far more difficulty. I mean, it was just so sad trying to find a job. Even jobs that had nothing to do with her weight would have been no factor. But how she struggled, and several other obese people in my family, and some very close, how they struggled. I saw that there was far more discrimination regarding these obese people. And it really just tore my heart out. Should they be included in this legislation? Should they be included, added to the human rights legislation we have? Liberty for everyone, not just some.
Absolutely, liberty and safety and protection for all people. The level of, I agree with you that there is discrimination against people for many reasons. And I'm not an attorney to talk about what language should be added beyond the fact that I can tell you that lives are being lost, that people are being assaulted, that the gravity of the violence against people based on their sexual orientation and their gender identity far exceeds, in no comparison, I would say, to what we see with people who struggle with weight, struggle with obesity. I too have friends, family members. I've had many clients, struggle with weight issues. But I can tell you that there is absolutely no comparison to the level of distress in our communities that they have faced. Life-threatening discrimination. Thank you for your question.
Representative Andrus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ma'am, thank you for your testimony. Let's take the situation at the Evergreen State College in Washington, where an individual who admits that they were born a man goes to the locker room where the Olympia High School girls swim team are practicing and is in the locker room with them, and it's my understanding was asked to leave, and that individual said, "You can't make me leave, I have a right to be here." And the decision of Evergreen Heights was, yes, you do have a right to be here. What can you tell me what may motivate that individual to want to be in that locker room when those girls are dressing?
I am not familiar with the exact case that you're talking about, so I can't speak to what someone's motivation would be. I can't speak to how the school handled it. I can't speak to that case at all. I can tell you that I have not, I think there was testimony that I heard today that alluded to what is a myth about transgender people, as I understand transgender people, that they just try on a gender back and forth as it suits them, and that is not the case. This is a biomedical issue where they are trying to seek being the gender that they experience and live in a community, in a world supportive of that, and the medical and scientific community back that up. And as we move forward, just like with many other issues that we have encountered and will encounter again, there are complicated situations. There are issues that come up that need to be dealt with. And there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So I apologize for not being able to speak to that specific situation. But I do know that there are some colleges that are dealing with this issue, with the person who talked today about being in college and their dorm mate not wanting, their family not wanting them to share a dorm room because of their sexual orientation, in that college protected that person's rights and saw them as being there with every bit of a right to get an education and to be housed.
Further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.